So let's start here. Deputy President David Mabuza has resigned from office. The move marks the way for Paul Mashatile, who was elected the ANC's Deputy President at the 55th National Conference in December. He'll basically take over now. Mabuza says he's communicated his intention to leave with President Cyril Ramaphosa. He was speaking today during his brother's funeral.
Conference. Manje Deputy President of ANC. What of a conference? Who cares where Paul Mashatile who's having Deputy President? President Doshodi, who's Mabuza, so she. In the Lanina, you will allow locate to a conference. Mogana nyamboni nyagaza kancane. Manje nami ngiyasheshisa ukuthi nike space.
For more analysis on that now, we can speak to political analyst Prof Bheki Mngomezulu. Very good evening to you, Prof. Grateful for your time. So this is not the most surprising news to be confirmed by Deputy President Mabuza today, but one has to wonder, I suppose, why it wasn't communicated through official government channels sooner.
Thank you very much, my brother, and good evening to your viewers. Yes, indeed, it's a very concerning issue on two grounds. One, you would not expect someone at this position to announce at a funeral that he has resigned as the Deputy President of the country. So that is unprecedented. That is the first point of concern. But then the second one, obviously, is that ordinarily the President is supposed to have informed the nation immediately after he had accepted the resignation of his second in command. So that would have been the correct procedure. So even if the President convenes a meeting and then, of course, informs the nation, the reality of the matter is this would have been overtaken by events, because already the nation knows that we now no longer have a Deputy President until such time that another person is elected to occupy that position.
And is this, though, a sign of what many had been saying about David Mabuza, that he basically checked out of the role quite a few months ago, in fact, even before the ANC conference?
That is absolutely correct. In fact, the writing was on the wall the moment the Deputy President declined the nomination at the ANC's elective conference in December. Some of us held him in high esteem, and we, in fact, gave him more than he deserves, because we were saying that he's a strategist and he understands South African politics very well. Even after he had not met the threshold for him to make it into the list of the contenders for different positions in December, we still gave him the benefit of the doubt and said that he would still emerge at the conference. Of course, in a way, we're vindicated because his name was suggested. But then, of course, it disappointed us when he did not avail himself, which then ruled him out of the contest. Then, given the fact that the ANC has this so-called two centers of power, with Paul Mashatile emerging victorious as the Deputy President of the party, it was almost a foregone conclusion that Mashatile would take over as the Deputy President, and therefore David Mabuza would give way, which is exactly what has happened.
And how might history, do you think, remember him as the country's second in command when you consider the very issues? I mean, he was instrumental in the government that we got post the, well, in fact, from the 2017 ANC conference to what happened at conference last year. But how will history remember him as a politician and the country's Deputy President?
No, I think the nation will not remember the former president for the position he held as the Deputy President of the country. But instead, they will remember him for having delivered the presidency on a silver platter to the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa. You remember that on the build-up to the 2017 ANC's elective conference, there was in fact an expectation that Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma was going to emerge victorious. Until the 11th hour, David Mabuza came up with the so-called unity vote, and then at the very last moment, he then handed the presidency to the current incumbent president, Honorable Cyril Ramaphosa. And then the president won that election by a slight margin of only 179 votes. So I think that is what the nation will remember him for. And some will say, in fact, that he was being dishonest in a way, And then some would say that one of the reasons why he did not make the threshold in the 2022 national election of the ANC is primarily because of the mistakes he made in 2017. There are people who have not pardoned the deputy president, or now the former deputy president, for what he did in 2017. So I think that that is the only thing that is going to be the highlight. As for his time as a deputy president, there is very likely, because the president was silent in a way, you would only see him surfacing at certain moments, but by and large, he would be a silent deputy president, which was a strategy for him because he didn't want to make it in a number of these political activities that are taking place. So then it would be as if he was not even in the country, only to surface when the situation was calming down. So as the incumbent deputy president, I don't think there is much that people are going to remember him for. But as for the build-up to the 2017 conference, and of course the actual conference, that is what is going to remain in many people's minds.
Is there still a role for David Mabuza in South Africa's mainstream politics, in the ANC specifically, and perhaps even in government? Or is this it? Is this time for retirement, basically, as a politician?
You know, my brother, it's very difficult to move from being a deputy president and then be an ordinary member of parliament. I don't think the former deputy president would want to do that. The only thing I think would work best is if he goes back home and then he enjoys his pension, which is something that he is entitled to, or in a worst-case scenario, then they may want to involve him in AU activities, which is what most former leaders have done, which would be, in fact, a good thing to do because, honestly speaking, he understands politics. He can still be an asset, not just to South Africa, but to the nation as a whole, to the continent as a whole. So I think those are the roles he can play, but not as an ordinary member.
Pardon me, Prof, how would he be able to say, let's say he were to get a continental posting, how would he be more effective there than he was as the country's second in command? What would allow him to tap into that experience more?
There is no pressure. If you work for the AU, or if you save the AU, there is no pressure. Or even if you save we have saved SADC, there is no pressure. Look at the role that former President Thabo Mbeki has played. Without any pressure, he has been more instrumental in doing a lot of things, both for the SADC region and also for the AU. So former Deputy President David Mabuza can play that role because he would not be having any vested interest. I'm vying for this position, I'm going with this faction and not that faction. So that would not be there, because one of the reasons why he has been so quiet is because, in my view, he didn't want to be associated with either faction A or faction B. So for that reason, then decided to take a neutral position. So if you were to work for the AU, then all of those kinds of things would be gone. In other words, he wouldn't be having a political package, as we normally say in politics.
And lastly, Paul Mashatile, then, largely expected to become deputy president in line with ANC traditions when it comes from a national conference. What is he going to bring to that role? Does he bring anything new that the country needs?
I don't think there is anything new. It comes from the same organization. It will be implementing the same policies of the organization. So I don't expect anything new. But then, of course, it's almost a done deal that our next deputy president will definitely be Paul Mashatile. The mere fact that he was sworn in as the member of parliament was in anticipation of a situation whereby our deputy president would resign, and then automatically he will then assume the position as the next deputy president of the country. But as to whether I will bring something new, I doubt that. The only thing I'm certain of is that he will be more visible as a deputy president than the outgoing former president, Deputy David Mabuza.
Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, always good to speak to you, so thank you so much for your time tonight.